Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we celebrate films we think deserve a little bit more love. Whether they're underrated, underseen, or sometimes even both, we're going to tackle them one film at a time. It's me again, I'm on my own, I'm Josh, and I am going to be tackling another listener suggestion. So Martin got in touch to suggest we took a look at Kingpin from 1996. So spoiler warnings if you've not seen it. But before I get stuck into that, if you could head on over to wherever you listen to this on, if the option is there, if the function is there to give us a 5-star rating or a good rating and review, I'd really appreciate if you took the time to do it because it helps other people find us, and who knows, they may suggest some brilliant films for us to take a look, and it just helps us grow. And and it should only take a second of your time. But anyway, you're already listening, so thank you very much just for that. It's really nice to have you here as part of the family, as it were. But yes, back to the film then. Kingpin from 1996. If you haven't seen it, Kingpin is, I think, what you could probably call it a cult classic from 1996. It's a comedy that follows Roy Munson, who's a former bowling prodigy whose career was cut short when a hustle gone wrong cost him his bowling hand. Many years later, I think it's 17 years later, Roy is a washed-up alcoholic. He finds another shot at redemption when he discovers a man called Ishmael, who is a very talented bowler from an Amish family. The two hit the road for a high-stakes tournament in Reno in order to try and save Ishmael's family farm, eventually facing off against Roy's flamboyant arch-nemesis, Ernie Big Ern McCracken, who's played by Bill Murray, and you've got Woody Harrelson in there as Roy Munson, and Randy Quaid as Ishmael, who's the Amish man that I mentioned there. As I said, Martin got in touch to suggest this one. Here's what he had to say. He said, "Hi guys, I believe that Kingpin is criminally underrated, especially on Rotten Tomatoes. It's one of the funniest films of the 90s. Bill Murray's Big Ern, that's a mouthful. Bill Murray's Big Ern is one of the best comedy characters ever, so that alone is worthy of a higher score. It's definitely the best film about bowling. I'd love to know what you think of it. Thanks, Martin." Best film about bowling. That's a specific niche. I'd say, I guess, Big Lebowski, but it's not about bowling. It's got bowling in it. And then if you're looking for a different type of bowls, then we've got Black Ball, which we did a little while ago. Anyway, so I hadn't seen this one. I thought we hadn't done an out-and-out comedy for a while, so I thought I'd pick this one from the pile of listeners' suggestions. I was a touch dubious, I'm not going to lie, going into this one because it's from the Farrelly brothers. Nothing personal against them, but they made a few comedies, should we say, that haven't aged that well. Your likes of your Dumb and Dumbers, Stuck on You, Shallow Hal. What else did they make? Something About Mary. They're comedies that they haven't aged particularly well. But, I tried to go in with an open mind because I've not seen this before. So we'll come back to that. Let's get stuck in then. So if you've not listened before, we start with the likes, what the positives, and then we move on to the dislikes, and then we'll circle back to, is it underrated? Is it underseen? Is it both? In terms of what I like then, as a comedy, I think there's some pretty solid comedy in there in terms of making the characters the foils. It does a good job of setting the characters up as like self-confident, think that they're the absolute dog's bollocks when they're not. They're actually just con men. They're a little bit deluded in that sense. It's a sporting comedy as well, obviously, because it's about bowling. And it does a lot of what good sporting comedy does, which it takes the sport and the world of the sport, this idea that, sport attracts real intense fandom. So some people, if they like a sport, that's everything. You will meet people in life who's, following the football, the cricket, the rugby, whatever it is, that's their everything. They take that, they apply it to bowling, and then they what they do is they have the characters in the world of the film have a clear love and passion for the sport, taking it seriously. And then they make jokes about that in earnest without taking the mick out of the sport and the fandom and the characters, apart from, as I say, taking things like the lead characters down a peg because they're basically con men and things like that. And I think that's really good. I think what you've got to do if you're going to make a comedy like this, you can't just be taking the mick. You have to show, you have to make those jokes in earnest almost. And I think they do that really, really well here. There's some really good jokes around like bowling stereotypes, like the big flamboyant shirts they wear, and some of the costume, the makeup's really, really funny. I mean, Bill Murray and Woody Harrelson's wigs in this are just like, I laughed every time I saw them. They do some really, really, really great jokes with their wigs and things like that. There's some great performances in it as well. Woody Harrelson's pretty good in it. He carries a lot of it. I mean, he's very, very versatile. He can do drama, he can do comedy, and he shows that off here. Works really, really well. Randy Quaid's good in it as well. He's a kind of lovable idiot. There's some real comedy in his naivety and his lack of world knowledge from from his background and things like that. I thought that was, quite funny for the most part. And then Bill Murray, I mean, he absolutely Martin's right. His character is probably the highlight of the film. He absolutely gobbles the screen up when he's on it. He's a fantastic villain and a fantastic comedy character to boot. So, yeah, plenty in there to like in terms of the comedy and the acting. Great soundtrack as well. So yeah, it's got a lot in there that I think people will still like as a comedy. In terms of the dislikes, again, I was dubious going into this, so perhaps I will preface this with a touch of, am I looking for this? And again, I will say this: it's by no means the worst offender. It's by no means the worst offender in Farrelly Brothers films, but it's not by no means the worst offenders in terms of comedy from this period. But there is a touch of the perhaps laughing at people, mocking people, looking down on people who are not quote unquote normal, and a touch of the mean-spirited of it. There's a touch of the, oh my god, a sexually active older woman, gross, and it's like, I'm not too sure I'm on board with that, but it is also very, very of the time. And I think it's easy to forget that this would have been, probably acceptable. This was acceptable at the time. And as I say, it's by no means the worst offender. In terms of the comedy itself, look, it's not particularly my sense of humor. It's not particularly my taste, but comedy is really difficult because it is subjective. And I think a big part about this, I don't know, maybe Martin could say more if he was here, but a big part about a film like this is when you watched it. I still think there's elements that I have affection for some of the other Farrelly Brothers films, but equally, I can see that it's not aged well. So it's a really difficult line to walk there. But trying to be objective about it, there was plenty to like in there, and I still think people would find it funny now. And it really isn't the worst offender in terms of the offensive nature of it as well. Critical reception then. So again, Martin's picked it because he thinks it's criminally underrated. If you've not listened before, we always do the IMDb, the Rotten Tomatoes, they're both Rotten Tomatoes, the IMDb, both Rotten Tomatoes, and then we average those out. And then we have a little look at the box office as well to see, is it underrated or is it underseen? So at the time of recording, it gets over on IMDb, 6.9 out of 10. The Rotten Tomatoes audience give it exactly the same. They give it 69%. And the Rotten Tomatoes critics give it 51%, which averages out at 63% or 6.3%. Now, I would say that the average score, in my opinion, is probably appropriately rated. However, I will agree with you, Martin, when I say that 51%, that critics score, Rotten Tomatoes, that is too low. I think that is too low. It's, for me, I thought it was a solid 6 out of 10. It's not particularly my sense of humor, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just comedy is very subjective in its nature, and I still think there's plenty that people today would like in there. Box office wise, it made 25 million worldwide, which isn't that high considering it's got Bill Murray and Woody Harrelson in particular in it. So I'd say I think it's probably appropriately rated, but the critics have rated it very low. But it is unseen as well. So I think there's definitely an audience out there for it now. So yeah, probably think it probably is underseen in terms of the ratings appropriate, but I do agree with Martin that the critic score is a little bit low. So there we go. That's it. Kingpin, all done and dusted. Let's say appropriately rated. With the critics going low, agree with you there, Martin, and underseen. If you like this sort of comedy, if you like the other Farrelly Brothers films, or if you like sort of goofball comedy that doesn't take itself too seriously, then give it a watch. I think there's probably plenty of people out there who would like it more than I did. That's it then. We'll be back next week with another episode. If you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. On all the social medias, if you search for Just Films and That on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or Letterboxd, you'll find us. We're always putting stuff out there. Do give us a follow. If you click the link tree in the show notes, everything's there. Give it a click. Take you to wherever you want to go. Give us a follow. And thank you very much for listening. It's goodbye from me. Cheerio.